It's a warm welcome to you all. I think it's fair to say that most of us don't have acres of land with multiple antenna towers and a shack full of the latest radios and gizmos. But as our next presenter will show, you can have a surprising amount of fun and success operating with quite a modest setup. So it's a very warm welcome to Joe Chester, M1MWD, who's going to help us make the most from your small station. Hello, Joe.
Morning, David. How are you? Morning to Tammy as well there behind the scenes in Norfolk. And good morning to those of you watching on YouTube, either live or on the repeat. I should also, I think, say thanks to Eric for staying up to the early hours in California to give us an insight into what's going on in Ellicraft. That K4 does look a great rig if you want that level of performance. So I suppose we'll all have to start saving, or else we'll have to rely on Santa Claus maybe. Hi.
I think, yes, amazingly brave to stay up till 2 in the morning.
Indeed. Right, moving along. While I'm at it, I want to say thanks also to David and to Mark for the invitation here this morning, and particular thanks to Don Field, the editor of Practical Wireless, for much encouragement to write about my antics in that magazine. So, why am I talking about small stations? Well, the obvious answer is because I have one. The less obvious answer is because most of the amateur radio stations in the world are small stations set up in a small space in the house or with limited space for antennas out back, maybe 100 watts or QRP even, and plagued by background noise. Many operators would see this as a limitation on what they can do, but I disagree, and I intend to show this over the next 30 minutes or so. This is what I'm going to talk about. First of all, I don't think you need a mega station to have fun with a radio. That might seem obvious, but at times it doesn't seem quite so obvious if you read the magazines and listen to other radio operators on the air. I want to talk about the background noise levels a bit, and I have two practical suggestions of how to get around these problems. And finally, I want to talk about antennas, basically to say that any antenna is better than no antenna, but you need to be careful. And if you are careful, you'll get more out of it. And there's a bit of technical stuff as well. So on we go. If you signed in this morning or logged in this morning hoping to find answers to these questions, I'm afraid I will have to disappoint you. I'm not going to deal with any of these questions. You'll have to go elsewhere for that. So, how much contesting do you do? Do you chase DX? Are you hunting down DXCC? How much portable activity do you do? Are you active on the low bands? To do these things, do you need a full legal power or QRO station with a high-powered linear amplifier, a massive tower and a set of beam antennas, which mostly annoy the neighbors, a room full of different transceivers? Well, the answer is absolutely no. Now, I would like to point out that there is a difference between the word need and the word want. And to illustrate this, I might want a Ferrari to go to Tesco's, but I don't need one. Hi. So let me start with the contests. As I asked the question this way, the obvious answer is, of course, small stations can take part in contests. But let me ask the question slightly differently. Should small stations take part in contests? Or even another way, why don't so many stations say that they don't participate in contests? So I want to tell you a bit of a bedtime story. Well, it's a bedtime story for adults. I want to tell you about the WOW event. Now, this isn't the WOW event of radio astronomy history, but it does tell us something about the question I'm asking. Once upon a time, well, it was actually the Sunday of the ARRL SSB contest in April. It was pre-COVID, so we had the family over for lunch. The grandkids were busy wrecking the garden and wrecking me head as well, so I slipped into the spare room where my KX3 sits on a table in the corner. This is connected to an inverted L, 10 meters up in the air, and runs 10 watts. Around noontime, the 20-meter band came alive with US stations calling CQ. Now, the ARRL contest is one for the big guns, fierce contesters running kilowatts into beam antennas up on tall towers. Then I hear a call I recognize. You know him as well. He's a highly competitive contester and is rightly famous for a piece of software we all use. It's a well-drilled routine. QRZ, pause, call sign 59CT, QRZ, call sign 59CT, like a metronome. Should I answer him with me 10 watts from me piece of wet string up in the air? Well, if I don't, I'll never know. So I counted through the next three, just to get in sync with the rhythm of his replies. Then I pushed the PTT and said, M1 MWD 5910. He replies immediately, wow, 59CT. Why the wow? Because that 10 says I'm running 10 watts. And if the ARRL contest seems to be for mega stations running megawatts, how does 10 watts work in that scenario? Now, of course, the family heard this wow from down the corridor while they were preparing dinner, so I had fun trying to explain that to them over dinner later on. I emailed Tom later in the week, and not for his QSL card, but to find out what he was running. Correct, he was running a kilowatt into a 5-element beam up on a 30-meter tower. So I think the message from this is clear. There's no reason, if you only have a small station, not to join in the contests. Have a bit of fun. But Tom did ask me to convey a couple of simple messages to anyone doing this. First of all, work out what the correct response is. This could be 59 and a random number, 59 and a country code, 59 and your ITU zone. Work out what the correct response is. Secondly, don't be too ambitious. One of the things I like to do is go in the air for an hour and see how many different countries I can contact. I normally get 10 or 12, and then occasionally I get one I haven't contacted before to add to my DXCC score. Don't do this. This kind of thing is perfectly okay outside the contests, but it's not okay in a contest. Okay, moving on. Noise. Background noise comes from distant lightning, and there's not a huge amount we can do about it. I think this is possibly one area where a directional antenna might help, but let's move on. Man-made noise, of course, is a completely different thing. This comes from electrical interference from fridges and freezers and washing machines and TVs, and what our US cousins call wall warts, poorly made switched mode power supplies. As radio operators, we know how to address this problem, find the culprit and do what needs to be done to remove it. Ferrite cores come in useful here, and there are many other solutions. And then we come to VDSL. I'm going to take a pause here for a moment and say something quite personal about VDSL. I'm plagued by it. You are too. It's much worse on the low bands than it is on the high bands, and I understand the frustration everyone has with this. The RSGB is actively trying to do something about it, but try to understand the origin of this problem. The origin of this problem was a government instruction to BT to increase customer broadband speeds as quickly as possible. The cheapest and quickest way to do this was to allow the DSL modems to use frequencies in the amateur bands. Steve, G0FUW, writing on the QRSP mailing list a few days ago, detailed what he did to make an effective complaint to Ofcom. Many others are doing the same. Steve even wrote to his MP, who replied to say that at its most basic level, fixing the problem is going to cost Openreach a hell of a lot of money and will also affect services to customers by reducing their broadband speeds. Now, I reward and approve the effort to do something about this, but you have to understand that it would take a government decision to actually do anything about this, and I don't think that's going to happen. Personally, I prefer the approach advocated by Chris, GU3TUX, writing on the same mailing list a few days later. He says he has had positive results to minimize the effects of VDSL on his station by changing antenna orientation and polarization. What he's basically saying is that we're radio engineers, so it should be possible for us to innovate our way around this problem. Of course, there is another solution. Why not just get away from it and go out portable. Just get some water. This was my first attempt. Not exactly.
We'll let you have a little drink there, Joe. And just a reminder to everybody at home now watching, I know you do particularly like interruptions with little questions and thoughts and things. So if you are watching this at home and you're on YouTube and you can enter into the YouTube chat, then just pop your name and call sign and we'll read your question straight away to Joe. Back to you, Joe.
Thanks, David. It gets a bit dry. I haven't done this for a very long time, as you know, David. Right, where were we? Yeah. This was basically a bit of a buddy pole, put up in the air as a horizontal dipole on the end of a fishing pole. In the boot of the car was a car battery and my 706 and a mobile MFJ mobile tuner. Couldn't get a match, heard nothing, complete disaster. But then I got myself a better tripod. I also got rid of the car battery and bought myself an Telegraph KX3 powered by a lithium ferrous phosphate battery. And if you haven't seen one of these things, this is what it looks like. A car battery the size of a small paperback book. With this, I went to Port Call. That's the image of the top right-hand corner for the International Lighthouse Weekend. Now, Port Call's lighthouse is very, very old. It was originally coal-fired, and then they changed it over to gas. But instead of doing a proper job, they put a slot machine at the base of the tower. So you can imagine the harbour master having to crawl on his hands and knees along that pier, with a gale blowing and the water washing over the pier to put a shilling in the slot. The pictures on the right show again, the buddy pole set up on a proper tripod this time. The KX3 is on the table, the same battery I showed you a moment ago. We were set up in the lee of a pub, so it wasn't long before a few pints wandered over, accompanied by their owners. What's that guy doing? I heard people say. Is he fishing? Is he contacting ships? What about this one? He's catching lightning. Nice one, that. Thank you very much. My favorite one was the little girl who said, "Mammy, what's that man doing talking into his hand?" Now, this setup is not exactly the most portable setup in the world. It's more transportable than portable. But then I discovered this. What is it, you're asking yourself? Or maybe not. Maybe you know what it is. From the top down, the plastic bag contains a 13-foot counterpoise with a lug. This next down, as you can see, is a couple of coils in a tube with a BNC on one end and the screw connection on the other. Then comes what looks like a bit of a car aerial. Next down on the left is a table mount, and on the right is a tripod mount. The pencil is mine, by the way, just to show how big this thing is. You don't get the pencil with the kit, So basically, it's a base-loaded car aerial, but please don't tell Wayne I said that. Not exactly a DX antenna then. So how could you expect to work DX with a thing like that? But wait a minute. This is the AX1 set up on a tripod. You can see the counterpoise running away to one side, and it's connected into the car to my KX3 again running off that battery. Now, my XYL has gone off to buy some fresh fish for dinner, so I don't have very much time. I hear someone working a pile-up on 14.2. He never calls CQ or QRZ. I listen for a few minutes, and then I hear QRZ listening 10 up. He's doing the splits. Now, the KX3 has 2 VFOs, so it's only a half minute's work to set one to his listening frequency. He's still hammering away. Call sign 5973, call sign 5973. Then a very slight change. He calls CQ twice in a row. So I instantly switch over onto his calling frequency and say MW1, MWD, 59. I switch back to his calling frequency and hear MW1, MWD, 59 here in Rome. Greetings to Wales 73. Now it's 10 watts to compromise aerial. Okay, it's not rare DX into terms of distance, but that's the call sign of the Order of Malta amateur radio station operating in Rome. They're not on the air very often. So that's not a DX antenna then? Depends on your definition of DX, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's the famous Marconi Footsteps project. I was fascinated by early stories of Marconi's work and decided I'd have a go at mimicking what he did. Now, I have no intention of creating a room like this. This is the Haven Hotel in 1899. But I did want to have a go at trying to replicate what he did, in the very early days. This is before 1900. Uh, Another way to put this was that basically it was an excuse to get out portable. Of course, I needed to have an aerial. I needed an antenna in the spirit of Marconi. So I got myself an 80-meter vertical using a 10-meter fishing pole and using 300 ohm twin lead up the fishing pole. The two ends at the top are solid together, effectively to make a 20-meter radiator. For counterpoise, I bought some bamboo poles from the local garden centre, and I made little wigwams and stuck those in the ground to keep the counterpoise off the ground. I decided early on from research I did that Marconi was basically using what we would call low power, so the KX3 was perfect for this. And I decided to work from the same places that Marconi worked from. This is Pepperbox Hill in the middle of a storm. This is a nicer day on the beach near Lavernock Point. And this is the Haven Hotel. Now, I did actually call around. I write on a few websites that I'm on, or a mailing list that I'm on, asking people whether they thought it was a good idea. And basically the answer came back, no. However, I can tell you that this worked. We had great fun. We met lots of nice people wandering and coming up and asking us what we were doing. I had lots of great QSOs. These are just three as an example. Bruce, G4EUW. I hope you're watching, Bruce. Thank you for your email yesterday. Bruce is an old Marconi operator from the old days. It was nice to work him from the beach. Mike F8VOU. I worked him several times. He was actually waiting for me to go on air because I put the details of what I was doing on a QRZ page. And so, Mike, if you're listening, thank you very much for coming up several times to work me. And then there's Mike, R9GM, who lives just south of Moscow. That was 4,000 miles, and he gave me a 5.9 plus 10. So who says that compromised antenna and low power can't achieve results? So having demonstrated what antennas can do, I thought I'd say something about antennas. First of all, a light bulb will transmit, and I've heard stories, but I haven't been able to track them down, of people who have actually got DXCC in 100 countries using a light bulb. So anything will transmit if you know how to match the thing. Personally, I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with a random length of wire. I think you need to stop worrying too much about getting the absolute maximum out of the thing. Just get something up and call CQ. I wrote a piece a while back about what I call the magic of a piece of wire, end-fed. This is LB Seabig, W4NRL, well known, unfortunately now Silent Key, who over a long career in amateur radio basically tested every configuration of wire antenna that you could possibly try. His quote is that the end-fed wire will put a usable signal on more bands than almost any other contender. And the shape of the wire doesn't matter. You can hang the thing up and fold it over and twist it around your garden, whatever you have to do to get the thing up. But you need to be a little bit careful. The problem is the impedance at the end of this wire. As you know from your studies, if you have a piece of wire set up as a dipole, then the current is highest in the center and lowest at the ends, and then the reverse for the voltage. Now, and you also know, of course, about Ohm's law. Resistance is current over voltage. Now, this should be impedance, but it's just easier to use resistance in this talk this morning. So for the end of the word, this means a number, voltage, a large number, divided by current, a very, very small number. Here's an example. You get a huge number for your impedance at the end of the wire, which becomes very, very difficult to match. So you need to find a length of wire which is not a half wavelength on any frequency you're trying to use. Then you stick a matchbox or transformer on the end to transform the impedance down to something that your radio can cope with or your tuner can cope with, and add a counterpoise wire. This is what mine looks like. If you look at the top center there, you can just see the wire going off from the top of the fishing pole. The picture on the right shows the thing going in a tree to an insulator, going in a tree held up by a bit of string. And that's my matchbox there at the end.
Joe, you did ask us to interrupt you if we had any questions or comments, all right?
I need another drop of whiskey, thanks.
Is that what it's in here? Just thought I'd read these out to you. Firstly, David J said, did Marconi have to clear the table before dinner?
He actually did. He used to have dinner in that room. I was in that room in the Haven Hotel. It's now a lounge. We had afternoon tea, would you mind, in that room. And I did set up the radio in that room with the AX3, but it's inside the steel frame building, so I didn't get out. But yes, he used that room, and it was also the dining room of the hotel. And he had friends around for dinner, and they had parties in that room. There was actually a piano in the corner of that room, now gone, of course, and they used to have sing-songs after dinner in that room.
That is fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, well, I was going to give you another chance for your water there. And just ask, while you're doing that with one hand, can you just show us the battery again? Because Mike Taylor and JMH59 or 2E0 IGP, give him his call sign, he asked, could we have another look at that battery? So that's a Zippy 4200, yeah?
Yeah, there's an 8400 version as well. I have one of them as well. But with this, work using 10 watts SSB, I can go all day. I put I change the connector to a power pole, but basically, yeah.
So does that give you 12 volts as well? Because a lot of lithium type batteries, they're multiples of 3.7 volts, aren't they?
No, it gives out 13.6 volts. It's a 4S, blah blah blah, whatever. It produces 13.6 volts, and because of the chemistry inside it, it holds on to that 13.6 all the way down to 5% charge. So it literally runs all day and will run your radio all day. Again, it's not going to run a full QRO amplifier for more than a few minutes. But if you're out with a QRP rig like I am frequently, no problem. I use it at home as well. As it happens, that story about the WOW call, it was powered by that battery.
Really?
I wrote a piece about batteries in PW. You have to be careful about the chemistry in these batteries. There is a well-known chemistry that tends to be slightly explosive, but this one, that's lithium iron phosphate, is perfectly safe, and there are actually no recorded instances of it doing anything nasty. You have to charge it with the right charger, of course, which does make the thing a little bit expensive to get started. Yeah, the way to go, in my opinion.
Just on that question then, Joe, I'm just predicting what others might say. That sounds like almost a perfect battery for radio hams. Do you know if it's something, have you ever travelled on a plane or anything with a battery as big as that?
No, but I've heard of guys who have.
So it's probably okay to take them on a plane as long as you declare them clearly.
Well, they're saying they just put them in the backpack. The backpack goes through the scanner. Occasionally, the guy at the other side of the scanner opens the thing and takes it out, says, "Is this a battery?" and puts it back in again. Now, there is, you need anybody going to do this for on an airplane. Are we really talking about going on airplanes today, David?
Well, not at the moment, maybe, but in the future.
Yeah, anyway.
In the future, I'm sure it will come back.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they say most airlines have no problem with them. So I haven't taken it on an airplane myself, but way to go. Where are we?
And one other supplementary question from Mike, who asked one of the questions about had they missed the battery, is do you know where they can be purchased from? Rough. I mean, are they readily available?
Can I name the company,
Of
David? Is that
course.
all
Yeah,
right?
that's fine.
Hobby King.
Okay.
Hobbyking.com I got mine from.
All right. So there we are, Mike.
And they have a site, a UK site, and I mean I don't know where they actually have they a warehouse in the UK. I have no idea, but it came in a couple of days, and yeah, it's been great. I bought the bigger one as well, the one twice the size, because if I'm driving out somewhere in the car, it's easy enough to carry the two batteries and have a spare. But yeah, way to go.
All right, well, I'll leave you to get back to your talk. And just a reminder to everybody watching at home, though, that you can ask questions here at any time during Joe's talk, in particular when we're doing rehearsal with Joe over this. He said he encourages people to interact during his talk, so don't think you're being rude interrupting.
Yeah. It's a fireside chat in some respects. I hope that people have managed to grab a cup of coffee or wherever they want and are sitting in a comfortable chair watching this. And thanks again, lads, and lassies for tuning into this ramble. Right, on we go. So we come to the 3 rules for antenna performance. 1, get as much metal as you can up in the air. The longest wire you can fit inside the space you have, bend it any way you want. The higher the better, especially the high current middle part of the wire. Get that up as high as you can, and then match the impedance carefully. Again, to talk about the bending it bit. CBIC did every possible configuration of wires as theoretically and practically. I only did them theoretically. I also did wires that I bent at right angles. I bent them horizontally at right angles, vertically at right angles. I twisted them around in wriggly things, and you get a picture that looks much the same as this, no matter what you do with the thing, yeah? As long as the middle of the wire is up as high as you can. If you think about the inverted L on the right, it goes up 10 meters and then goes horizontally across. So the high current part is as high as I can get it in the air. The left-hand side is a sloper. I don't think there's much difference between these two. I mean, theoretically, there is a small difference. But it's very, very slight. The inverted L allegedly is a 1.56 dB performer, and the sloper is a 1.47 dB performer. But who knows? I don't think you'd notice the difference, whichever way you hung it up. I do need to say one more thing about the wire before I move on, and that is you have to be careful about the length of wire you pick. You'll find suggestions for good lengths of wire in my Practical Wireless article, and also in the RSGB Radio Communications Handbook. The new edition has a chapter on the end-fed wire and has the same diagram that I used in my article. A diagram originally done by Alan G3CCB, who did lots of work to work out which are the sensible lengths of wires to use to avoid the high impedance problem at the end of the wire. Right, where are we going from here? Yeah. I assume you're all studying the picture on the right-hand side every day, and if you're not, why not? This is the average smoothed monthly values for sunspot numbers for the last couple of years.
Now you're getting that, Joe, from Space Weather Prediction Centre. I think there's other places as well, isn't there? Or is that the best place, you think?
It's all over the place. It was in PW as well, and I think it's in the RSGB Radio Communications Handbook, even if I remember correctly, or maybe I don't. Now, clearly we are at solar minimum, yeah, and there's no way of getting around that. If you look really, really carefully at the graph, you'll see there's a slight uptick. But again, I think 70 days this year so far, we've had no sunspots. So clearly we are still at solar minimum. But, and it's a biggie, the fact that we're at solar minimum doesn't mean that there is no propagation. So we come to a little bit of a seesaw, a little bit of a circular argument. And it goes like this. You can't work them if they're not there. Well, that's fairly obvious. You also can't work them if you're not on the air. And of course, if you don't go on the air, then there's nobody to work. So this is a bit of a circular argument. What we tend to do is say, oh, it's solar minimum, the propagation is low. We look up DX maps or the DX cluster. Oh, there's nobody there. And we say, well, the propagation is poor today. There's no point in me lighting up the radio station. Whereas the opposite is true. There is propagation if you get on the air and are patient and you want to work it. Of course, if you don't get on the air, then everyone says the propagation is bad. And it's a circular argument. The, the, the right answer is get on the air whenever you can get on the air, give it a go. And if you do, you won't be disappointed.
Actually, Joe, if you don't mind, I'll come back on something there. Just it's so relevant to what you've just said, because this is National World Health Day. It's World Health Mental Health Day. Sorry, right. And it struck us that there's never been a more appropriate day and time to think about getting on the air to care. You know that's been the RSGB's campaign since we sort of hit lockdown in February, March time this year. So as you mentioned about getting on the air, don't just get on the air for yourself, but get on the air because it'll help others. If you're sitting there thinking that you can get on the air, you'd like to get on the air to talk to somebody, there's probably at least one other person somewhere else who'd really appreciate that call. So just a quick plug for World Mental Health Day there. Anyway, back to you, Joe.
Yeah, well done, David. The point I'm making is that if you get on the air, there will be somebody there if enough of us get on the air. But if we take the attitude of there's nobody on the air, then there will be nobody on the air. The fact that for solar minimum is irrelevant in some respects. I put this up just for fun. I don't remember the name of the amateur who has this for a station. And by the way, when I pasted this slide into this, pasted the picture into the slide, it cut off half a station because the station is actually twice the size of that. And I think he has something like 20 Collins radios that he has sourced over the years and repaired and has operating again. So to some extent, I just put it up for fun to ask a simple set of questions. How many radios do you need? Do you need just one, or do you need several? Do you need one for every band? Do you need one to cover every band from 1 hertz up to several kilohertz? And you need a set of antennas to match all of that. The question really is, are you a museum collector or are you an operator? I know which I am. Which brings me to network. I thought I'd try to get on the 80-meter nets. And David, to reflect back to something you said, I think the 80-meter nets lit up once lockdown hit, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. And I thought it would be simple enough to just tune up a frequency of some sort, get a match, and I'm off.
Yeah. Plus, actually, however, just as a little bit of a bright spot as well, we really are at minimum. And we had a talk a couple of weeks ago on our club from Steve Nichols, G0KY, to say,
yeah, I know, Steve.
to talk about NASA have just called the start of sunspot cycle, I think 28. So it's going to get better.
Yeah, it's going to get better. But of course, 80 meters is a peculiar band. And again, I've written at length about that. The D layer is a bit of a wet blanket, which tends to, make things difficult. But there are ways around it, as I'll show you in a minute. The problem with 80 meters is that it's very, very difficult to get an 80-meter antenna up half a wavelength, because half a wavelength is 40 meters high. So most people tend to rely on compromised antennas again. And of course, the noise problem is worse on 80 meters, and VDSL is particularly bad down there. This is my version. I use ladder line up a 10-meter fishing pole again. I soldered the two elements together at the end. By the way, this idea of running two lengths of wire, folding one over against the other, is called linear loading. And I do intend to talk about this in a PW article in future, because it's a great way to get a long antenna or a large antenna into a small space. More on this one later. Again, the 10-meter. So I end up again with a 20-meter radiator. I add a long elevated counterpoise. Now I do need a bit of inductance, a bit of base loading to get an effective match here. I've even actually at one stage made my own coil. Check it with an antenna analyzer. Move the tap along the coil, and you will get a match, and it will work. Of course, the noise is a problem. and everybody has discovered Hack Green. At least I hope everyone has discovered Hack Green. I'm thinking of starting a campaign to nationalize Hack Green, given the vast number of people who want to use it. Um, this is one way to get round the noise problem. This is me set up on Hack Green one morning, listening on 80. I listen on the web SDR, and I use my 7300 to transmit.
Joe, just if I could just interrupt you a bit there, because
Yeah.
this is, as you know, this is an introduction to stream, and there's lots of newcomers to the hobby, maybe even some who haven't even taken their license just yet. So can you just explain a little bit about what Hack Green is, and about the ability to listen into other stations remotely over the internet?
Yeah, these are just internet receiving stations. Now the Hack Green one is particularly good because A, where it's sited, and B, what it is. It's sited in Cheshire, roughly in the middle of the country. It's a double G5R fee up 130 feet in the air, run by a bunch of guys. I should have made a note of the call signs. Sorry, lads. But I've been in touch with you, asking you how you do this stuff. It's an SDR which is connected to a switching system which can allow through the server. I think one morning I found 20 people on it, or maybe it can handle more than that. I don't really know. Maybe David, a pointer for the future is to maybe get the RSGB to get these guys on one of your Monday evening slots to explain what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
There
well,
are lots of these
that's
other
a
ones
great
about
idea.
set up by amateurs just for the fun of it. There's one in Conway, one in Stafford, there's a set of them in Weston-super-Mare with different antennas on them. What I do is I tune in, I tune up, I get a match, make sure my transceiver is working properly, and then I light up the computer, light up Hack Green, and I listen on Hack Green and transmit with the 7300. I use the mute button on the keyboard to mute Hack Green when I'm transmitting, and lots of people are doing this as a way to get around the noise problem. Taking me back to what I said about VDSL at the start, we need to innovate ourselves around this problem and not try to confront it head on. I don't think there's much future in that approach. This is the solution. I would also like to say that this is not something new, because if I remember back in the very beginning of this, most of it had separate transceivers and receivers with complicated switching and gear between the two to make sure you don't blow the front end of your receiver when you transmit. So this is exactly the same thing, a separate receiver and a separate transmitter. Fortunately, you don't need switching gear now, yeah, because the receiver is a long way away from you. Can, can I ask a question I asked in the magazine, and maybe somebody listening this morning, David, might have a go at this. If I use a web SDR, say, for example, I don't know, in the Netherlands, yeah, and I'm listening on that and transmitting on my 7300, and I work a station in, say, Croatia, is this a valid QSO?
Are you posing that to our viewers at home?
Is it a valid QSO if I transmit on my transceiver but listen on an SDR much closer to the transmitted station I'm working?
Okay.
Interesting question.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to ask that question, and hopefully we'll get people at home to answer it.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
So,
No.
what's on 80 meters? Club nets, yeah. And this is what you were saying, David, about when lockdown happened. A huge number of club stations all went on air to run nets, some once a week, some more than once a week, some even only once a month. But they're there and they welcome call-ins, and anybody's welcome to join. Then there's the specialist interest groups like AMSAT and VMARS. Again, anyone's welcome to join. I actually listened to the AMSAT net on a Sunday morning. Quite interesting, some of the stuff they're talking about satellite work, yeah? WAB, Worked All Britain, is an interesting example, and again, they welcome people to join in and work the guys who are out mobile. The RSGB news every weekend from different places around the country. Give them a shout if you want. Plenty of stations to contact, plenty of stations on air there on 80 meters. And then I want to make special mention of the NRC net. Now, I know you're going to go over maybe, David, to the NRC net where they're broadcasting live at the moment. But there are a bunch of amateurs who volunteer to run the NRC net in pre-lockdown days. And you basically decided to set up a net every weekday morning to stay in touch when lockdown happened. Nigel, G4RWI, good morning, Nigel, the main net controller. 80 meters answer to Nigel to Parky, I think. If you let me get away with that one, Nigel. And everyone is welcome to join in. It's a huge bunch of people. Sometimes it can be 20 people calling in there, and the conversation goes from the exotic, like how to paint a fence, to how to actually set up a patch antenna for Oscar 100 and everything in between. Fascinating net. Love joining in there, and very grateful to the boys for calling me in every morning. So we're heading to the end, David. What else can you do? Well, here's a list. DXCC in a weekend? Yeah, why not? You set yourself up on FT8, and I'm sure with a bit of concentrated effort, you'll get to 100 countries in a weekend. What about satellite work? Well, I'm no mechanical engineer, so but if you have a bit of mechanical engineering skills, or if you're an octopus holding 2-meter antenna in one hand, a 4-meter antenna in the other hand, and try to work a handy talkie in the other hand while trying to make notes in the log in the other hand, yeah, you can go work the LEO satellites. I do recommend having a play with the reverse beacon network. This means you send out a CQ call on a frequency in the CQ band, and the RBN picks you up. You log onto the RBN on the web. You'd be absolutely amazed where your signal is reaching. I regularly put out things like 5 watts on 80 meters in the middle of the day, and get answers from stations in the USA in the middle of the day on 80 meters with the RBN. Amazing, absolutely amazing facility. We should be very proud of the guys who set that one up. And of course, you could decide to become a CW operator. Go to a boot camp and improve your skills. There's endless possibilities here for your small station. So I think I have proved that you don't need to be a mega station to have fun in contests, to go out and work DX, to go out and have a chat on the net, to go out and go portable. Lots of things you can do. And all you need is a transceiver and a piece of wet string. With that, David, I'll thank you again for moderating this morning. I hope you people listening have got something out of this. And I'm open to questions now. These are my contact details if anyone is interested. Over to you, David.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Joe. That's been fascinating, a lovely introduction, and just a really down-to-earth way of how you can get the most from a small station and a modest station. Obviously both portable. You've enjoyed some of that, as well as having a modest station at home. We've just got John Stringer has just said, just started LeoSat, working with homebrew antenna and 2 handies, great fun, he says, and his call sign's M5JFS. So thanks for watching, John. And M0JCQ, ham radio channel, well done to Joe for a very accessible talk. If you're just getting started, take notes, says that person. Sorry, I don't have your Christian name there. So anybody, if you've got any questions now at all on Joe's talk, we are at the end of it. And you need to ask them pretty quickly now using the YouTube chat. Thank you very much, Joe. I mean, have you got any? I mean, you're using a KX3 there. What do you use at home? Is it the same radio or something different?
I've used the KX3. I have a 7300 as well. You saw a picture of it on one of the earlier slides, and that was, in a sense, my main radio for a long time. But that was set up in the corner of the kitchen, which is a very busy space, and a lot of activity goes on there and a lot of noise there. So I bought the KX3 and put it in the spare bedroom on a spare table we had, and did a lot of my recent work there, stuff that I've recorded in the magazine, and yeah, it's been great fun, and I enjoy it. And I do have something small to add to Eric's talk. I don't think Eric said this at the time. This is an email I got from one of the aircraft engineers who lost his home in the California wildfires. I lost my entire radio station, and not to mention my house and all its contents. This is Alan, N1AL. So now he says I get to start over. I'm just about to order some new QSL cards. My girlfriend wants me to go out and buy some clothes, but first things first, he says.
He got his priorities right.
Yeah, the
I've got
the KX3 is a remarkable little thing, and it's so tiny, it's ridiculous what it does.
Do you know,
So
can I make a little confession here now? I went to the States a couple of years ago and actually bought one of those as a kit because I really wanted to make a radio. I'm an electronics engineer. And do you know how they're still in the individual boxes? But they're still in their individual boxes, so I must get round to making it because I hear it's wonderful. Just a couple of other comments for you. Sorry.
I know a man who'll help. I know a man who'll help you with that. Nigel, if you're listening, although Nigel told me he had to run off for a flu jab at some stage. If you're listening, Nigel, there's a KX3 kit ready to be built.
Well, no, I will do it, but and I really want to do it. That's why I wanted to buy it, but I just haven't got round to it yet. Quite a busy at the moment. I've got a few other comments from you. Mike Taylor says, I think there was a stream on getting started on satellites. Hopefully something we can do from home with lots of QRM. We were actually due, I can mention at this moment, if you'll forgive me, Joe, that we were having a talk from Peter Goodall later in the day at 4 o'clock, but unfortunately Peter's not very well, so his talk on satellites has had to be postponed, but what I hope is that we'll be able to make that a feature on Tonight at 8 webinar later in the year or early next year. We've got... We've got Tim Longworth, GW4VXC, that says, well done, Joe. Yes, yes, yes. The only antenna that doesn't work is the one that you don't have put up. You haven't put up. That's right. And from Essex Ham, it's just disappeared off the screen. Great talk, very inspiring, Joe. What advice would you have for someone who's just passed and keen to get started on HF? And that's from Pete, M0PSX.
Well, I think there's plenty of examples of me playing with HF out there. There's no VHF in that entire presentation, so you got to pick yourself a rig. With all due respect to Eric, you don't need a K4. You might want a K4, but you don't need one. I have a 7200. I had it for years. It's probably the most widely sold transceiver in the world today. The KX3 works extremely well as well. There are many other QRP rigs out there if you want to go down that road. And of course, there are many other full 100-watt rigs out there as well. So the first stage is to go pick yourself a rig, talk to somebody you know, see what they have, see what you like, and then get a length of wire up in the air. And call CQ on some band. Absolutely.
A few nice thank yous and well dones from from Simon MW0NWM and from Joe. From Gareth M6VOV. Says thank you very much indeed. Joe Chester says, Steve K says, thanks for a great talk of equal interest to me on GM1 for 40 years and my son an MM7 for 4 months. Well done.
Well done.
And Mick M0VMK says, thanks, Joe. I've used Hack Green to complete a contact. There is a delay, but it can be done. A contact is a contact. Alan M0OLT says, often hear Hack GM, but not on set and vice versa. Is it Skip? Derby to Cheshire isn't far, he says.
Well, I mean, I go on air every morning at 10:30 to have a chat with Nigel and Kim and Martin and the boys. And as I said, the range of topics we talk about is vast. And I use Hack Green every day. I should say this dropped off the front end, David. I should have welcomed everyone to sunny Tewkesbury, where the sun always shines by the banks of Shakespeare's River Avon. The sun always shines except when it's behind clouds. And
nice local plug there for your local tourist board.
It works across country to Oxford. I've worked down to Devon. and Cornwall, G4CUT. John, G4FZA is down in there working
Great.
QRP, and some guys can actually hear him up in Oxford.
Lovely stuff, Joe. I
We'll make the
must.
wire.
I've got to move on because we're really coming up to the end of our time. As you know, we've got to meet the next
Yeah. I'm
junction
watching the clock
at
here.
11. Just a couple of things. Mark M1MPA says, what sort of antenna setup do you have at home, Joe? Did you get that, Joe?
Yeah, can you put up the screen?
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I'll get Tammy now to quickly put up the screen. There we go.
That's home.
Which one? The boat or the house?
The boat.
Oh, really?
That's the 10-meter fishing
Are you
pole.
doing this from a boat?
I knew I'd surprise you, David.
I didn't know that. And we did a tech rehearsal and everything. So, oh well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Oh, we were living in South Wales a couple of months ago, and then we decided to do something more interesting.
Lovely.
So,
All right.
so look how simple it is, lads. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can even do it on the boat.
There you go, Mark. You've got your answer there. Another quick one from Ben M7 MMS, so a newcomer to the hobby. Hi, Joe. I use a Yaesu 817 and want to spend a decent amount of time portable, but have no idea about what battery setup to use for long days. Any tips? Well, I think, can you get that battery out one more time? We're going to have a real plug here for this battery. It's a Zippy 4200, and I think you said it came from Hobby King?
hobbyking.com.
Lovely. All right, so it's as David said on our YouTube chat stream, which I'm looking down here, M1 MWD / stroke MM then, Maritime Mobile.
Interesting. I asked that question, but I didn't get an answer in the magazine. So there's another interesting question. Is a WebSDR QSO a valid QSO for DXCC?
Yeah.
And is operating off a boat Maritime Mobile, even if it's not on the sea?
Well, similarly, as you know, we're coming to you from Norfolk, and so we have the Norfolk Broads, and I understand that actually in terms of radio, they're considered as not Maritime Mobile either. But anyway,
Yeah.
Joe, we're going to have to leave it there because we've run right out of time, as they say. Thank you ever so much for tonight, for this morning rather. I normally do this at night, you can tell, can't you? But you've obviously inspired lots of people, and lots of people have sent lovely comments, and I'm sure there'll be more to come as well. But Joe Chester, thank you ever so much for today.
Very kind of you, David, to moderate this morning. Enjoyed it very much, and hope some people get something out of it. Yeah. So catch up with you another day. Yeah.
Lovely. Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Cheers for now.